morning again. We are going to continue in our series. And the question I want to ask us as we begin this morning is really this. You ever felt stuck? Stuck in life? Like you got to a certain place and you just wondered, how in the world did I get here? Who am I? Where am I going? Not sure about the future and what that holds. A long time ago, before I became a pastor, after college, I had graduated college and I was in between undergrad and grad school. I found myself working at a t-shirt factory in between, and I was the lowest man on the totem pole. Now, for someone who's been through 4 years of undergrad, you're filled with all sorts of dreams about what life could be. It's not folding shirts and packing boxes and cleaning screens as the lowest guy on the totem pole in a t-shirt factory, okay? That's like not what I had in mind after graduating school. And I knew, on the inside of me, I'm like, hey, this is a stepping stone, just building up some cash before I get off to grad school. But I had plenty of days where I'm back in the back shop thinking to myself, is this what my life is? Why am I folding t-shirts after 4 years of school? I don't know if you've ever been there before, but I told myself I'm probably never going to feel this way once I actually get a real job. Until I got a real job, and then found myself doing all sorts of things that I never imagined that I was going to do. I don't know about if you guys know this, but pastoral ministry is not one satisfying moment to another all the day long, every day of the week. There's plenty of different moments where you just wonder, how did I get here? Is this what I want my life to look like? After you're counseling someone for like the 5th time and you just feel like you're hitting your head against a brick wall, or you have I was a part of a church at one point that was a lot larger than me, and there was some staff conflict and people that weren't getting along, water cooler conversations, and I'm like, is this really what pastoral ministry is? And then we started this church, and I'm like, okay, this is where it's going to be fulfilling. I'm going to start this church. I'm going to get to recreate the culture from the ground up, and every moment's going to be amazing. Until the first 25 people that we had were just like, yeah, you know what? I'm not sure I buy into this. Not sure I want to do this. And so we're out. And I was left, as people kind of left one by one, I thought to myself, is this what I want to do? Who am I and where am I going? I don't know if you've ever had moments like that in your life where you've hit a dissatisfied moment and you've wondered, who am I? Is this the life that I wanted? And where in the world is my life headed? The reality is that so many of us feel this way on a regular basis about our life, and the deep disappointment and dissatisfaction that a lot of us can wrestle with can leave us with questions about who we are and where we're going. I think the hard part about this is that our culture is obsessed with trying to find ourselves and trying to secure for ourselves the best possible future ever. I don't know if you guys watched the movie How to Train Your Dragon, that whole series, but the second movie in the series, the main character, a little guy named Hiccup, he's like this dragon master, and he's asking himself throughout the whole movie, who am I? Why am I here? Why do I exist? And he's done some pretty cool things, but he's wrestling with this, and you can feel the angst on the inside of this guy of how do I discover who I am, and what path do I need to go on to be able to find this sense of fulfillment for me? And then spoiler alert, okay, he meets his long-lost mom who's been disappeared for 20 years, and she's this creepy dragon lady. It's really weird. But at one point, she looks at him and says, you're supposed to bring the dragon world and the human world together. That's why you exist. This is who you are. And the beautiful thing at the end of the movie is he does it. It's this glorious moment where he healed the dragon world, he healed the human world, and everyone's celebrating and cheering him yeah, you're the new chief. And I couldn't help but ask myself, what if that didn't happen? He built his whole identity on being successful as a dragon master, and people said, this is who you are, but what if it didn't happen? What if he didn't heal the dragon world and the human world and bring them all together? What if it was just constant conflict? Would there be any sense of self left if he wasn't successful? And I think for a lot of us, we feel that sometimes when we're wondering, if life's not turning out the way that we want it to be and we don't feel successful in what we've given ourselves to, do I have anything left as a part of who I am? It's why I love this quote from one of my all-time heroes, Pastor Tim Keller, who actually passed away just a few days ago. Felt like I lost a mentor and a friend. He said one time, to have an identity is to have something sustained that is true of you in every setting. Not just a few, not just if you're successful, but it's true about you in every setting. Otherwise, there would be no you left. Maybe some of you, you've been trying to build your identity out of a dream job, and maybe for some of you, you lost that job and you wondered, who am I? Maybe for some of you, you've been building around a dream job that is not yet, and you're thinking, man, I will be someone when I have that someday. Maybe for some of you, it's building your identity around a spouse. And if I get that person, that perfect person, then I'm going to finally be complete or whole. Or maybe you lost that special someone and you're left figuring out, who am I now? Maybe it's you built your identity around being a parent. And before you know it, the kids are going to fly the nest. And at the other side of that, you're going to be wondering, who am I? Who am I? Do you have an identity that is so rock solid that it's true of you in every setting? Or have you built it around something that could vanish in a second, or maybe never come if you're not successful in it? That's what we want to talk about today. What I want to get to is when we talk about our future peace, in our series, Disruptive Peace, I want to help us understand, how do you build an identity? And from that identity, discover the purpose that God has for your life. Because who you are and what God has said about you and where he's taking you, that alone can be true of you in every setting and every time, no matter whether you're successful or not in this life. And that's what's going to lead us to peace. And so here's what I want to do. I want to show you a letter that the Apostle Paul wrote to a group of Christians in the city of Colossae. And what he wants to do is help them understand this is who you are, because this is who God says you are. A lot of voices out there are telling you, you are fill in the blank if you fill in the blank. God says, this is what I want to say about who you are in every situation, every time, every place. So Paul says this at the beginning of chapter 3. He says, since then, you have been raised with Christ, reminding that Jesus got sent into this world, the Son of God, to live the life that we should have lived, died in our place to forgive us the debt that we had between us and God, and be raised back to life to give us this beautiful new sense of life. He says, since you have been raised with Christ, set your hearts on things above, where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things. He says, for you died, and your life, watch this identity, your life is now hidden with Christ in God. He says, when Christ, who is your life, appears, watch what happens in the future, then you also will appear with him in glory. Here's the first thing I want you to write down as we journey through this passage, what it teaches us today, is don't search for your identity. Don't search for it. Receive it from God. Receive it. And don't just receive it, live from it. Don't go out and search as if you got to go on this path of self-discovery, as if you're going to go out there and suddenly find yourself somehow. Receive your identity from God and then live from it. Now, this was a revolutionary thing to say back in the first century, because in the first century, there was a very clear sense of who you were and what you were supposed to do in life. Really, in a lot of ways, there's only three main senses of which you can get your identity and your calling from. And I'm going to break it down into three categories for you. The first one is outward, and this is what the first century knew. You got outward, inward, and upward, okay? Outward, in the first century, in a traditional society where there was honor and shame, cultural values to it, you determined who you were based on what your parents said you were, or what the culture said that you were, or what the authority figures in that culture said that you were. And that was the first century. If you grew up as a carpenter, guess what you were going to, or your dad was a carpenter, like guess what you were going to be? You were going to be a carpenter. If you grew up like as a slave, guess what you were going to be? You were going to be a slave. Like if you grew up as a politician in the first century, guess what? Like your parents, like you did what your parents did. You were who your parents said you were, and you didn't question it. I was at Warriors Conference over the past couple of days with a bunch of guys, and one of the husbands that was there, described when he met his wife, who came over here as an immigrant. When she started falling in love with this guy, like her parents didn't like it, and they told her, "If you marry this guy, we will disown you." That's the traditional society. In a sense, it's like you are who your parents say that you are, and nothing else. We've already determined your direction for you. You just need to not question it and go with it. Now, for us in the 21st century as Americans, we hate that. We rebel against that hardcore because what we believe in, at least what we're pitched as far as Western American values is this idea of expressive individualism. You don't let nobody tell you what to do. You are the captain of your own ship, and you determine who you are and where you want to go. Go on a journey of self-discovery. This is the path of inward. If the traditional society, you found your identity and your calling on the outside, what the society said, in our culture, we find it inward. Go on a journey of self-discovery. Do the things that make you happy. Ignore the judgments of other people and what other people say about you, and you march to the beat of your own drum. I mean, we hear that all the time, right? It's celebrated in movies like, How to Train Your Dragon. It's celebrated in Frozen movies, right? Like, no rights, no rules, no wrongs for me. I'm free, right? And my wife was telling me in Frozen 2, there's this moment where she finally finds herself, and at the end of the movie, she's in this crystal palace, and she's been looking all this whole time for that special someone, and then the movie's like, oh, surprise, that special someone is you. Yay! You're special. That's what our culture is telling us. You determine who you are because you are special, and no one can tell you other than you. Can I tell you, for as oppressive as the outward way to find your identity and your calling is, the inward one is just as oppressive. Why? Because it puts a crushing burden on you to find out who you are. If you're the only one who tells you who you are, you better get it right. And if you're not successful in finding out who you are, then who's to blame? You are. And I see the pressure that it puts on people on a regular basis to find the dream job, to find the dream spouse, to try to find the dream look, the dream brand of who you are. And not only find that brand in how you look, how you feel, the ideas that you express yourself on social media and all that, but to brand yourself and then promote yourself constantly. Whether it's job interviews or whether it's posting the last breakfast that you had on social media, people feel pressure to be someone unique and to tell the world, I'm special and unique. That's a crushing burden to put on yourself. Is it any wonder, like we talked about last week, that we are one of the most anxious cultures in the world? You determine who you are, and you better get that right. And if you don't get that right, is your life worth living? Is it any wonder that teenage girls have a higher rate of suicide rates now than they ever have in our culture? Some of us have said, I'm going to define myself and my success and my identity and my calling based on my job. Some of us have said we're going to do it around a romantic relationship. And if I can find that person, then I'm going to be complete. The problem about this, by the way, is it puts a crushing burden not just on you, but on the person you're going to find. And when they discover you've built your whole identity and your purpose on them, guess how they're going to feel? I can't fulfill that. You've got these expectations over me. I can't meet that. And you know what? What has initially been, proposed to you, this is going to be the best thing ever, it's actually going to create some distance between the two of you. And I've seen couples that have separated and gotten more distant because they've had crushing expectations on each other to fulfill each other in a way that only God can. Now, some people have said, hey, I know people can't fulfill me, and so you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to find my perfect person in the metaverse. I'm not making this up. In some countries, you can literally marry your avatar romance. It gets weird at this point, okay? Because not only can you create the person of your dreams in the metaverse, exactly how they look, how they act, and what they say, but they'll never let you down. And so some people, I watched a documentary on this a couple months ago, and I'm really creeped out about this, okay? They're yeah, of course I'm going to marry this person because every other human's going to let me down. Bingo. And you know who else is going to let you down? You are. You can't fulfill yourself. We weren't made to. The other thing that's crushing about the inward way to find your identity and your calling is that it puts way too much power on your fickle desires and emotions. It's you follow your dreams, follow your heart. Well, how's that working? One day I want to have a diet, the next day I want me that Krispy Kreme. right? One day I want to run a whole marathon, and the next day I want to just binge watch whatever show I want to watch. We are so fickle. We don't know what we want half the time. And you're going to enthrone that to make yourself fulfilled and complete? Jeremiah 17:9 says, the heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can understand it? Comedian Woody Allen actually put this to the test. Maybe some of you enjoyed some of his movies, but Woody Allen followed the follow your heart narrative to his fulfillment when he divorced his partner of 12 years to marry the adoptive daughter that they had. Uber creepy, but he followed his heart. You know what? I'm going to ditch you because I like the daughter that we have better than you. How's that working out for him? A lot of allegations, a lot of lawsuits, a lot of unrest, a lot of relationships destroyed. Go ahead, you follow your heart. I just can't promise it's going to go well for you. Pastor Tim Keller summarizes it this way. He says, the modern sense of self is crushing. It must base itself on success or achievement or some human love relationship. And if any one of these things is jeopardized or lost, you lose your identity. It's well documented that under the conditions of the modern individualistic self, social ties and institutions are eroding, marriage and family are weakening, society is fragmenting into warring factions, and economic inequality is growing. You can't find your identity based on what society says, what your parents says, what your authority figures say in your life, but you also can't find it in a satisfying, life-giving way if you just look inward. It's not going to be found outward, it's not going to be found inward, but let me tell you, there is a third option here. You can find it upward. I'm going to put these pictures on the screen here. Let me illustrate it this way. When you're looking at your identity and your purpose, finding that, picture yourself on this side of the line here. If you're looking at the left side and you're thinking, man, I've got to find my identity, I've got to find my purpose, there's a number of different ways you can do it. You can do it by being the best parent and having the best kids. You know, you could try to do it through romance or through a job, but let me tell you, it is insecure at best. And if we're trying to find that identity and purpose, man, it is going to be elusive. We're never going to have it. And when you lose any one of those things, guess what else you lose? Your identity and your purpose. But can I tell you there is a third way, and this is the upward way. And when Jesus made that bridge for you, when he came and he gave his life on the cross, by dying in our place, what he told us in that moment is you are of infinite value, that the God of the universe would send his son into the world to die in your place. You are loved and chosen, and you are made for a purpose. God did that for us in the person of Jesus Christ. And so instead of fighting for our identity and purpose, now we get to fight from it. There is a tremendous security and confidence that we can have when we remember who we are because of whose we are in God. Instead of being insecure all the time and trying to find yourself, receive yourself from the God who loves you and gave everything for you. This is what Paul said when he says, set your minds and your hearts on things above. Find it upward, not inward, not outward. He says, because your life, who you are, is now hidden with Christ in God. And it's not something that can be taken away. It's done. Like when Jesus was up on the cross, he looked up at heaven and said, it is finished. Not it is a maybe, or it is a if you live your best life now. It's done. I've won. This is who you are. I was reading a writer, Sarah Barrett, the other day, who was reflecting on the identity crisis, and she said this. She said, the true reason for today's identity crisis is not that we've forgotten who we are. It's that as a society, we've rejected and forgotten the God who made us. Can I tell you who you are based on who God is? God's the creator of everything, heaven and earth. And you know what that means? You were made by him. You were designed by him. You've got infinite value because the creator made you. Not because you made you, because he made you. God is the great caller. And as a caller, he has called you, not only into existence, but for a purpose. God made you on purpose. He made you for a purpose, and he's got a great purpose for your life. Because of him, not because of you. He is the Redeemer. When Jesus came in and he died for us, he redeemed and bought back everything that was lost, meaning you are of infinite value to him. that he would lose the life of his own son for you. He is the Savior. We are rescued. You're not damaged goods anymore. You are so infinitely valuable. Saved, rescued. He is the Lord. And you know what that means? We're his servants, but not by a dictator. We serve the one who served us first. He is our Father. And that means we belong to him. He loves us. You are loved. That's who you are. Peter puts it this way in his letter to a whole bunch of people around the Mediterranean world. He says, but you are a chosen people. You're a royal priesthood. You got royal blood running through your veins because of what Jesus has done for you. You're chosen, you're royal, you're a holy nation, meaning you are not damaged goods. You are beautiful, pure, sprinkled, clean, washed, clean heart, fresh start. That's who you are. You are God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. That's who you are. Can I tell you how powerful this is? We got a woman in our church who years ago felt like she had lost her sense of self because she was an amazing engineer in a field where it was mostly guys. And she kind of built her sense of identity and her sense of worth and value around the fact that she was that woman who achieved the engineer status, and there was nobody else working around who was a woman except for her in that place, and then she had kids. And can I tell you, kids can blow your world up? They sure can. And she decided, you know what, I'm going to give everything to just raise these kids. And so she stepped out of the working world and started just going full-time and raising her kids. And in the middle of all that, she's like, man, who am I? I don't even know who I am anymore. She started coming to our church. She started meeting some other people who seemed like they had a confidence on the inside of them. And she started journeying alongside some of these people and discovering that their confidence was not based in their job. It wasn't based on anything that they try to achieve for themselves. Their whole confidence was rooted in Jesus Christ, and it changed everything for her. Instead of trying to secure her value and her worth, she found it in the God who made her. And there was a whole different level of confidence that a job could never have given her. And she could parent her kids with freedom and security. Don't live to try to find your identity. Receive it. Receive it and live from it. It's going to be a whole nother level of confidence. And in that, we're going to experience what Ephesians 4:14 says. Then we're going to no longer be infants, tossed back and forth by the waves. And I'm telling you, it is a rocky place to be to try to find your own self. We're not going to be tossed back and forth by the waves anymore, blown here and there by every wind of teaching and by the cunning and craftiness of people and their deceitful scheming. You're going to be rooted, secure, confident because of who God is. Now, how does that impact how I live now? Man, it makes every difference, every single difference. Because instead of trying to work to find yourself, you are a whole, complete self. And so here's the second thing I encourage you to write down. Don't worry about missing your purpose. Selflessly live what you already know is true. When you know the God who made you, and you know his word and what he's already taught you, don't try to be like, man, I'm trying to find myself and I'm trying to find my purpose and my calling. Just do the last thing he told you to do. This is what Paul says at the end of that chapter in Colossians 3. He says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working not for yourself, not for the applause of other people, not for the approval of your boss, not for the inward self that's just trying so desperately to find yourself. No, he says, as working for the Lord, not to human masters and not even yourself. Since you know that you will, there's that confidence again, promise, you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It's the Lord Christ you're serving. In other words, there is a tremendous freedom. Once you have found Jesus, there's a tremendous freedom to do whatever for God. I think for some of us, we've gotten into that place of oh man, what if I miss my calling? Oh man, what if I miss what I'm destined to do, right? In that How to Train Your Dragon 2, he's like, man, who am I? I better find it, almost as if if I miss it, man, I'm going to just completely derail my life and everything's going to be horrible. I've got to find that one set of tracks I got to run on. Anybody ever felt that way? I'm missing it somehow? Paul's saying you're not missing it. When you're whole in Jesus, you got the freedom to do whatever. And it changes. We don't have to fight for the what you do anymore. It's not about that. It's about who you do it for, why you're doing it, and then how you do it. Can I tell you, when I was working in that t-shirt factory, and I hit that dissatisfaction day after day after week after week after week, because like in a t-shirt factory, I don't know if you know this, but it's like over 100 degrees on the inside. It's like literally a sweatshop, all right? It's pretty awful. You're stacking t-shirts, you're cleaning screens, and you're working around a whole lot of guys that just feel pretty awful about their life on a regular basis. Like if you've ever worked a manual labor job, it's tough. Like the conditions on the inside can wear you down after a while. Day after day, I was finding myself kind of discouraged, almost like I didn't want to go to work anymore, until God changed everything for me. I remember driving into work one day, and I just felt like God was saying, Scott, this isn't about you. Can I tell you something? I've got guys in that back shop that I love and I care for. You are so concerned about what is satisfying and fulfilling for you. Do you know that one of the best things you could ever do is to just show up and love the guys around you? I heard God say, like, you want to be a pastor. Yeah, fine. Prove it. Be a pastor to the guys in the back shop. I cut my teeth on pastoral ministry in a t-shirt factory, and it changed everything. Like, I started caring about the guys in the back shop and pastoring them, sitting there, listening to their life, speaking truth over them and speaking truth over to me. As we're like, cutting up, stacking t-shirts and putting them in boxes, I would take the rags just to try to introduce some joy into like an otherwise mundane, awful existence in there. I'd take the rags and start coming up and like creating new outfits for myself every single day. Like I showed up as a pirate one day. I showed up as like the sultan of whatever one day. I don't even remember all the different things that I did. No joke, I would not repeat this, and this is really not something I should even share. But like I cut a box one time with the hole out of it on the top and the bottom, put some straps on it, and I created like a barrel for myself, took my shirt off and rolled my pants up and it looked like I was naked. It was pretty awesome. Anyway, I created like new levels of joy in the back shop because I was like, life can't just be mundane anymore. I want to introduce joy and love into these guys' lives. And you know what happened? One of them started paying attention. He's like, what are you living for? That you come in with this kind of energy and this kind of care for us. We ended up talking about Jesus. And it was a couple months later that we're sitting over pizza together, and I introduced him to his creator, and he gave his life to Jesus Christ. His life was never the same. God's saying, stop thinking you're missing something or you got to get on a specific track. In whatever you do it all for him. And there's a level of joy and purpose and satisfaction that you can bring to every single mundane area of your life, and it's going to set you on a whole new purpose for your life. Sometimes we're so concerned about finding that thing or that will. And Jesus is just not asking that question. In Luke 16:10, he said, whoever can be trusted with very little can be trusted with much. And whoever is dishonest with very little can also be dishonest with much. In other words, like you want that big thing that you want to be a part of, do the little things right. Because Jesus is like, man, you do those little things and you show up in those little thing moments, I know I can trust you with something bigger because you're not building your sense of identity on the bigger, you're faithful in the little. You're not living for the what, you're living for the who. And becoming love in the process. Jesus is like, that's what I care about. You becoming someone different. Jerry Sitzer said, the will of God concerns the present far more than the future. It deals with our motives as well as our actions. It focuses on the little decisions that we make in every day, even more than the big decisions we make about the future. The only time we really have both to know and to do God's will, right now. It's in the present, it's today. It's the daily choices we make to honor and serve God that determine whether we're doing the will of God. We already know what it is, however cloudy the future appears to be, and that we do not know what God wants for tomorrow doesn't excuse us from doing his will today. For some of you, like you know what you need to do, and it's not that you need to find this amazing job to climb the corporate ladder, get all sorts of money so you can retire and pick up shells to end your day at 75. Some of you are hooked on pornography and you just need to stop today. Some of you got a rocky marriage and you need to fix that today. Some of you, like you haven't been dealing with your finances in a healthy way and you need to get that right. John 8:31-32 says, if you hold to my teaching, you're really my disciples, and then you'll know the truth, and guess what? The truth will set you free. The truth will set you free. You want to be free in your identity? You want to be free about your purpose and your calling in life? Follow Jesus today. Just follow him. Do the last thing he told you to do. That's how you're going to get free. And can I tell you, it's not a maybe. If you follow Jesus, it's not a maybe that your future could be great. It's a will. Watch this. At the end of the passage, he says, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as your reward. It's not a maybe, it's a will. And there's security in that. Our future is certain because of Jesus. When he died and he rose again, he says, I'm giving you a glorious inheritance, a future that nobody can take from you. So here's the last thing I want you to write down. Live confident in God's secure future for you. Live confident, his secure future for you. We're promised an inheritance. Now, imagine with me for a minute. This week you get a letter in the mail, and it's from your long-lost uncle that you never heard of, nobody ever told you about, who was a billionaire, and he left everything to you. That sounds pretty good, doesn't it? All my worries go out the window, man. All my debt, all my concerns. I'm gonna go shack up on a beach somewhere in a mansion. That sounds pretty good. Stuff of fantasy, right? Can I tell you, you got better than a billionaire giving you an inheritance? You got the God of the universe who has promised you a better inheritance than money. To know him and to be a part of paradise forever? Are you kidding me? And it's not a maybe. It is guaranteed. 1 Peter 1, 3-4 says, praise be to the God of the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. In his great mercy, he's given us new birth into a living hope. Not a maybe, not a dead hope, not a maybe someday, but into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, and into an inheritance that can never perish, never spoil, never fade. No one's gonna fire you from that job. No spouse is gonna die on you in that. No health that's going to sag on you in this life can ever take that away. You're getting an inheritance from God forever. Now let me ask you a question. Who gets an inheritance? Family, right? God adopted you. And he adopted me. You're not just a part of any family anymore. You're a part of his family. And any kid who knows, who's been adopted into a glorious family and given a whole new set of tools and love and direction in life knows it is a game changer to be adopted into the right family. God adopted you because you mattered to him that much. Now, when do you get an inheritance? Usually after someone dies, right? Here's the beautiful thing about God. He did. He died for you and he died for me. But the beautiful thing about God is he didn't stay dead. He is alive. And that's what guarantees our inheritance with him. Jesus Christ died for you and he died for me, not to give us a maybe, but to give us a will. You will spend eternity with him. And my question is, do you know him? Do you know him? Have you invited him into your life? Are you building your sense of identity on you and what you can achieve for you and finding you? I'm telling you, it's going to be insecure. Have you received that from him? Are you free to do whatever for him and to find a purpose that someone can't take from you? Have you understood that your future is secure in Christ? Let me tell you, it changes everything. There's a man that I read one time who had a unique and extraordinary gift set. I didn't meet him personally, but I read about him. His name was Eric Little. He was a runner and a brilliant runner. Back in the 1920s and 30s, he was so good at running that, and as a Scottish man, like he not only made the Olympic team in Britain, but he was expected to win the 100-meter dash and by a landslide. And for someone like that with that kind of gift set, you can imagine like that would be a major source of identity. To win that gold medal at the most prestigious sporting event in all of the world, like that would be the pinnacle, right? That's what you could hang your sense of worth and confidence and calling to. Except not for Eric. When he was on the boat to go over to compete in the Olympics, he found out that the heats, the trials to even compete in the 100-meter dash were held on a Sunday. And he flat out refused to run them. killed his chances of winning a gold medal in that, and he did it for one reason. He said, Sunday is the Lord's day, and my identity is not on my running. My identity is on Jesus Christ. And come what may in this world, success or loss, I know I'm confident. I know I'm secure. And he was willing to hang that gold medal up in the 100-meter dash because he knew who he was, and he knew where he was going. The crazy thing is the British team actually allowed him to run the 400-meter dash, and he blew everybody away. He got his gold medal, but that didn't define him. His success in running was not where his identity and his purpose was. It was in Jesus Christ. And it propelled him to live not for running, but actually for the sake of a world that was lost and in need of Jesus. And so he actually gave his life to missions, and he went to China as a missionary to go tell as many people who had never heard about Jesus this life-giving news about him. And then World War II happened, and he ended up being in a concentration camp and ended up losing his life in the middle of all of that in a concentration camp. But he died the most joyful person in that concentration camp. He died giving love to every single person in that camp because he wasn't living for everything on the outside. He was willing to be imprisoned because his hope was far beyond the gates of that prison. My question is, do you know that kind of hope? Do you know that kind of purpose and identity? Jesus said, invite me in, and I'll give it to you freely. Let's pray. Jesus, my prayer for myself and my brothers and sisters in this room today is just that we be the most free people on planet Earth. That whether we're working in a back shop folding t-shirts, or whether we're wiping butts as a parent, or whether we're in a concentration camp, or whether we're in the middle of a financial mess, that we've got a hope and a security and a confidence about us because our identity is secure. Our future cannot be taken. God, maybe there's some people who are watching online today or in the seats this morning who've never made that commitment to know you and to follow you. Father, I pray that you would reveal to them today how much you love them. That you loved all of us so much that you were willing to walk away from all the comfort of eternity to win us back. You were willing to, in a lot of senses, become the ultimate failure of dying a criminal's death on a cross so that you could love us back into the family. God, I thank you. Thank you. Thank you that you didn't live for comfort. You didn't live to secure your own identity. You were confident in who you were, and that was what allowed you to be free enough to give yourself away for us. God, we receive that identity from you. We receive your forgiveness. We receive your new future, and we want to live for you entirely. God, let us be that kind of people, and I pray that our world would change as a result. In Jesus' name, amen.
We hope you enjoyed today's experience. Don't just hear the message today, put it in action. What spiritual next step do you need to take? Go ahead and fill out that digital connection card and take that next step. Or you can just get information about how we can help you go closer to God. Right now we're going to worship through our giving, and you guys are so generous. Thank you. Your giving allows us to put into action God's transformative power by helping our friends and neighbors know Jesus, meeting real needs in our community, our city, and even all over the world. You can click the Give button right on our live stream page in the info section. You can give on our website at thewellnh.org/give, or by simply texting the $ in the amount to 84321. You can give a one-time gift or a regular gift by automating your giving. And listen, let us know how we can serve you by texting us at 97,000. We would love to hear from you. So have a great week. We'll see you next Sunday, and don't plan to watch alone.